okay, so the court may not have enforcement power, but we as not even just citizens, people who live in the nation have some kind of enforcement power, but don't believe we do.
There's a certain kindness and there's a certain decorum that I think especially exists on the left side of the spectrum. Think about January 6th, for example. That was an unprecedented moment. We use that word so much, but these are unprecedented times.
Yes.
And this idea of thousands of people who would leave a rally by the guy that just lost, who says, stand in for me and go to this place. They go to the Capitol and they break in and they beat up cops and they tase them, at least to the death of some people. And then there was a commentator said this that I thought was interesting. Okay, why would you pardon those people? And they made the analogy of a king or a despot when they have run a revolution and their people to be free.
Was against the injustice, but I wonder if it was also an investment in wanting America to be the thing that people hope it is. I think it goes back to the 20th century, right? Like Cold War civil rights, we get the civil rights movement and we get the legislation in part as a response to the reality that you can't make a case for, capitalism, democracy, whatever this configuration is, and have Jim Crow. So they start to change things, right? And because Black Americans capture the imagination of the world, people love to watch us and listen to us, except that it was something like the nation had to move on civil rights because the entire globe was watching.
I'm Maurice Ruffin, author of The American Daughters.
My name is Imani Perry, author of Black in Blues.
So Dr. Perry, how are you today?
I'm pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're here at Baldwin, you're here in New Orleans.
Yes.
And I always love having you in town, but I feel weird having you here with this police state we got going on right now. You might have saw that there's police, feds, tanks, everything else in town right now.
Yeah.
I wish we were here under a lighter circumstance.
Me too. It's terrifying, actually. And I was thinking, riding over here, seeing all of the tanks and the assault rifles, that I guess theoretically this is supposed to make us feel safer.
Right.
But it actually was quite terrifying to me, particularly given the powers that be that we're operating with right now.
That's exactly it. I saw them arresting or at least questioning a houseman who was just sitting on the ground by himself. And I'm like, I would see that guy just walking around. I think, that's just one of my neighbors. That little citizen.
Absolutely.
I didn't feel in danger around him. But now you got these people with these long rifles. And again, we get the tanks, which I've never really seen a tank in New Orleans, other than Katrina for a second.
Sure.
I've never really seen a tank. And it's all brought here for entertainment purposes, which is also kind of bizarre too.
Say more about that.
Well, we have a big game coming up.
Right.
It's the biggest televised event in the world. It gets bigger every year. It's seen all over the world in most countries. It's propaganda.
Yeah.
It's violent. It's vicious. Even with the money that's made by the brothers involved in the game, they're being taken advantage of to a certain extent.
Sure.
And of course, you have to protect that.
Yeah.
Americans are often good at protecting things that media shouldn't be protecting so much.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I for an Alabaman, I don't know too much about football. I'm not a father of football, but I think that point, it's interesting how much it has been this flashpoint of culture over the past decade, from Kaepernick right onward, and this idea that somehow football represents the United States. But then thinking about this, I guess one of the questions I am struggling with is whether this is really the sort of all the paramilitary forces is about the Super Bowl, or it is also some kind of display that is actually really about making us adjusted to having tanks and soldiers in our streets, whether it's about an exercise of force that's the same kind of display of Americana that the Super Bowl itself is. I think part of what's hard is I'm not entirely clear about how to read this moment. And I guess that's the other thing that I was hoping we could talk about, because for you as an attorney, and for me as a former law professor, this question about what is the legal regime doing? What is law? Does it exist anymore? What is it doing? What is it not doing? Are we just going to fall into a completely fascistic state?
There's the frog in the pot of boiling water, that old metaphor.
Yeah.
And then there's the idea of the Overton window. And if what's going on now continues long enough, you could have a generation of young people who see this as normal.
Absolutely.
And they just buy into it. And I'm really amazed at how, when we were talking before about this idea of traditions. I know when I was in law school, my kind of professor, Professor Medina, she would always say, even the laws to a certain extent are just traditions and they're just ideas that we have decided to agree to. And the state administrations come in and as fast as possible, try to tear apart as many traditions as they possibly could, from renaming the Gulf of Mexico to say there's no longer birthright citizenship. And what we really see is that, people are grumbling online, but to a certain extent, people are acting as if they're helpless, which is strange to me.
It is.
There's these moments in time where, like I think Baldwin would talk about it, this idea of you got to show up physically for something. Like go to the White House. Just a few thousand people just go in front of the White House so they can see you standing there and know your presence. Yeah. As opposed to like posting on Snapchat, which, the current example it's gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's gone in a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's, it's funny because when I used to teach legal history and con law, I used to always make the point, the Supreme Court does not have any enforcement power, right? We learned that early on. And so the court, for all of their interpretations to be validated, requires one of the other branches. What happens now that all the branches are controlled by this party that seems, hell-bent on destroying any sense of accountability in the law. And I guess the other part then is what you just said is, okay, so the court may not have enforcement power, but we as not even just citizens, people who live in the nation have some kind of enforcement power, but don't believe we do. Why do you think that is?
What's tricky to me is that there's a certain kindness and there's a certain decorum that I think especially exists on the left side of the spectrum, on the moderates in the middle, all the way over. And think about January 6th, for example. That was an unprecedented moment. We use that word so much, but these are unprecedented times.
Yes.
And this idea of thousands of people who would leave a rally by the guy that just lost, who says, stand in for me and go to this place. And, they go to the Capitol and they break in and they beat up cops and they tase them and at least to the death of some people. And then there was a commentator said this that I thought was interesting. Okay, why would you pardon those people? And they made the analogy of a king or a despot when they have run a revolution and their people to be freed.
Yeah.
So people are like, it's leaving him in jail. It's like, no, his troops won. His troops showed up and won. They physically showed up and won. So, of course, people on the left, we have this tradition of like protesting, and that's been a thing for a long time for us. Not the right has adopted it. It's almost as if we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
Look, the whole Gaza thing is difficult for me because I remember when Ta-Nehisi was here and I was talking about it, and he was spitting wisdom as always.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about these young people showing up to colleges and protesting. But in the back of my mind, his little voice kept saying, "You're yelling at the wrong people. These college presidents, they don't pull any levers. They just following orders from somebody else."
That's the truth.
And because both sides of the politics, the former president and the current president, believe the same thing, let them starve, let them die, let the babies, die as well. Again, go to those people. Go to the White House. Go to Mar-a-Lago. Say something. Yeah. Be heard. And that it happened. And now we're in a situation where we had 40,000 dead. And I think today the president released a thing saying that all of the Palestinians just get out, just leave Gaza. Being a little rough being rough could be a good way of being effective, of actually putting your bodies on the line. But how can I say that as a black man, to a black woman? We've seen so much in this world against us.
Right. I think it's what you said. I think that's the terrifying piece. And when you were talking about just now about the student protests, one of the things for me that was really tricky with having students of mine who protested all throughout my career, this was very different, right? This is the first time I had students who were actually charged with crimes for protesting, even though they had taken over buildings before, or, the threat of expulsion, even if they had things so the consequences were different. So then it becomes, in terms of political organizing, this is why I'm really intrigued by you talking about putting bodies on the line, because in terms of political organizing, we sort of try to operate from a place strategically. If I do this, it's going to do, you sort of try to plot out. Now we're in a phase, I think, where it's not clear what the response is going to be. So it is at any possible moment putting your body on the line, like because it could be a completely disproportionate response.
Yeah.
It intended to silence people.
If somebody protested here in New Orleans at the Super Bowl, I could see that getting out of hand really fast.
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, I can just see it getting out of hand just in the future. Over the next 4 years, there'll be a moment. I think one of the things that was encouraged to me about the George Floyd protests, which were global, I mean, they were in Germany and Australia and everywhere, was that was not necessarily us doing most of it.
That's right.
I'm on my couch looking at my phone, Instagram, going like, oh, look at y'all showed up for a change. But then on the other side, you have in our democracy, 51% voting for the people who are saying, we don't really care about that stuff very much.
So what do you think, though? Like, I love that you raised this, because I now don't have an account of why the whole world took to the streets. Given where the world is now, I can't square it.
I would say that most of our experiences in this world are kind of pendulum, or the idea that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So even the idea that the current president is acting like a king right now. That happened in ancient Rome with Caesar. He's the one that ended the kingdom of Rome and started the Republic of Rome. So there's that part of it. And I think to a certain extent, having President Obama become the president, for a lot of the world, regardless of their personal politics or their racist or non-racist tendencies, they saw it as a beacon of hope. And you've seen people acting dissent be attacked and denigrated for centuries now. But here's this black man running the biggest, most powerful nation on earth. That's a beautiful thing. And then you see a black man on a corner have a knee in his neck. Yeah. I'm like, well, how can that be in the same world? And so I think to some extent that was a reaction to that whole time period. And plus every era has to end, that's kind of done now. It's like on to the next story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I think there's this thing, I think we as Black Americans occupy this really interesting place in the world, right? Because there's this kind of global mythology of the American dream. And then we sit as people who are signs that it's a limitation at best, and perhaps that it's a complete myth, right? And so there's something that allowed people, it's interesting because it allowed people to, the protests, was against the injustice, but I wonder if it was also an investment in wanting America to be the thing that people hope it is.
You're so optimistic.
No, I'm not optimistic in that, because I don't think it was a reasonable hope. But I think that there are people who want, and I think it goes back to the 20th century, right? Like Cold War civil rights, like, we get the civil rights movement and we get the legislation in part as a response to the reality that you can't make a case for, capitalism, democracy, whatever this configuration is, and have Jim Crow. So they start to change things, right? And because Black Americans capture the imagination of the world, people love to watch us and listen to us and stuff, that it was something like the nation had to move on civil rights because the entire globe was watching. But then what happens with what the nation does with respect to the rest of the world? Whether, and that part doesn't get mediated.
What is that statistic? Like every election, Black women vote for the Democratic Party at above 90%, close to 95% sometimes, which is often not even saying we love this side so much. No. They're going to not do the same kind of harm the other side is going to do. And then there's the idea that, power concedes nothing without demand.
Yes.
And I was reminded today, I think it was a podcast I heard about how, Lincoln freed the slaves. Okay, fine. But that's like 70 years after Saint-Domingue, when those Haitians were like, we're done with this. We're going to do our own thing. And I guess like the white governor was like, okay, we've already offered you all the ability to maybe be free if you fight for us. And they were like, no, we don't want that. Okay, I'll just fight for like a few minutes and we'll make you free. And they're like, nope. And then he's like, all right, fine, you're just free now. And they're like, okay, we'll fight a little bit now.
Right.
That kind of thing. So we have these sort of cycles of, every country has its own disease almost. It's almost like every country is born with a certain defect that's a part of it. And the defect of America is just this rampant hypocrisy of this brilliant dream that's always undercut by the reality of greed. At the end of the day, as somebody who's paid too much attention to Elon Musk, he wants more money. He wants China to help him make more money. He wants the government to pay money for his rockets. He wants tax cuts for his Teslas and his cyber beast, whatever they call those trucks. And I worked for the Social Security Administration as a lawyer years ago.
Okay.
My last law job, that was so depressing, I had to just stop practicing law. But one thing that I noticed in there was there was a tension between left-leaning people who were like, it's still good for the world. But they're also a little incompetent in a strange way, like the administrators. And then the right-leaning people were like, see, this place is terrible. And we're glad it doesn't function that well. We want it to not function. And I feel like the right has gone from that idea of, well, if the government doesn't function, that's totally fine. So let's just tear it all
down. Yeah.
Let's kill the DEI programs. Let's attack the federal agents who are investigating the wrongdoers. Let's kick out the inspectors generals, the ones who look and see if anything's wrong. Let's get rid of people involved in accounting, that kind of stuff. And I can't imagine where it goes except to places we've already seen. I mean, we've already seen this played out in every country in the Western Hemisphere at some point, whether it be Russia or, Germany, France.
Right.
It's just the same playbook.
Well, see, this is really interesting because I think this is one of the things that Americans don't really think about. But there are all these other examples of empires that collapsed, and they're still nations.
Yes.
Right? And that we may be going the way of the former European empires.
Oh, my goodness. That's why I go to Russia. You ever heard something called hyper-normalization? I mean, when I learned about that, I was sad for a month afterwards. I'm relatively new to the concept, but I guess it's the idea that leadership can make the abnormal seem normal.
Yes.
So today the sky is blue. Okay. Tomorrow the sky is red. Yes.
And we'll just keep saying yes.
You just keep saying yes to whatever they say.
I mean, I think that we may be there already. I mean, I don't know, because what do we mean? I feel like the press is a perfect example. They will say things.
Oh, my goodness.
At present, as though the current president isn't just lying all day long. Or we're constantly inundated with this conversation as though there's just not bold-faced lies happening all over the place.
Right.
Absolute lawlessness.
I'm maddest at the press right now, actually.
Yeah.
When I think about being in school, considering going to journalism school, and that great duty of finding the story and telling the truth. But I know what happened because I had conservative friends. And this is what they do to me. They would say, oh, I don't know, Rachel Maddow said this, or whoever said this thing. And they would go, Maurice, test it. We want to show you a clip from somebody on our side. And so I would test what our person was saying about their people. And I would play the actual clip and I go, oh, they'd just change the context of it. One thing that really messed with my head a lot was there's a lawyer I know was a very right-leaning guy. He's okay. He's fine, whatever. But he kept saying to me about 2 years, he was like, so Maurice, when are y'all going to make Biden step down? And I'm like, oh, he's just trolling me. He's just messing with me. He's like, yeah, that old guy, he should have been retired. And then I began listening to things. And I heard Ezra Klein said, I think last February, he's like, hey, maybe he should step up. I'm like, okay, now somebody left is saying that. So I went back and looked through moments of conservative media versus left media. And the left media is saying, he's totally fine. We have on good authority. We've done our research. People inside the White House are telling us he's fine. And then the right media saying, they're lying to y'all. What do you do with it when the press is not doing their job for anybody?
Right. Well, I think for me, part of the problem with that is that the spectrum is so narrow from left to right in mainstream media. There's not, as someone who's on the far left politically, the consensus around avoiding many truths, distorting truth, and seeing things. People treat political parties like they're sports teams.
Absolutely. Red and blue.
And so it's not just not being critical, because to me, I think even the sort of conception of an our side, you should still be critical, right? If you have some principles, you want the idea of a representative democracy is that they represent the interests, at least some consensus, even if it's a tense consensus on a given. And I just don't see it. And particularly media, it seems more often than not, and certainly this is not universal, but it is as though they're running the party line as opposed to acting with any kind of critical or investigative eye.
And it's so hard to find that.
It's so hard to find it.
I mean, I remember the first time I found Amy Goodman's,
Yeah.
what is it? Is it America Now? What is it
Oh,
called?
Democracy Now. Yeah.
Like the first time I found that, like 15 years ago, I'm like, where's this been my whole life?
Right.
Just somebody talking about something, not just the standard talking lines. Because if you would watch a CNN or MSNBC, you could tell like the editors were telling their reporters the was on certain basic stories. But I do want to ask you, because I know we've done all this political stuff.
Yeah.
What do you love? Like, what makes you actually smile?
Oh, so much. I mean, music, art, literature, reading feels like a balm now. Community, being with people I care about. Like the thing that I'm thinking about most now is how to create more time where I get to be with people with whom I share core values and interest in being there. It's funny, like I have moments in life that I'm now constantly returning to, like this one moment at a breakfast in Jackson, this other moment at a beach in Negril, Jamaica, like where I was with people who I care about. And we're not thinking about buying anything. We're not thinking about we're not thinking about working. We're just being with each other. And it reminds me of the best moments of childhood and being around the kitchen table at my grandmother's house. Like that space feels so precious. And it feels like what we need. And I'm grappling with this thing because I feel like on the one hand, there's all of this intense pressure, anxiety, urgency. On the other, we have to live. And a lot of this stuff, to whatever extent things are being destroyed now, I don't know that you and I are going to live long enough to see them repaired.
That's right.
So what do we do?
I mean, you're like 30 years old. So, how many decades you got?
Add 22 years to that. But you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I was in Senegal last year. I got to go to Black Rock, Senegal.
Oh, wow.
And it was a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
I know Ta-Nehisi was also Senegal at some point too. And what really struck me, I learned so many things, but what struck me the most was how they were outside of this bubble, whatever this bubble is. What I mean is like, this is a capitalistic, imperial, colonial, patriarchal, whatever you want to call it, thing that we're always inside of. And we're always like trying to push up against it, make a space for ourselves. And in America, I mean, how can you do it when you've been devalued from birth? If Joe Blow white guy is $1, and then the brother is 80 cents, and the sister is 72 cents, that kind of thing. But in Senegal, I didn't believe in that stuff. We traveled the entire country. We drove up to like the border with Mauritania, went out to the beaches. And time again, what I noticed was the presence, like just being in the moment, constantly. There was a family, this young brother, probably in his late 30s, owned a restaurant right on the beach. And he told us that there's like a very small, like sort of white colonial neighborhood. They asked him to buy the property. I think his dad opened that restaurant like in the 50s, something like that. Wow. He's like, I'm like, well, how much do they offer you? He's like, I don't know, like $10 million. Somebody. He's like, we're never going to sell this.
Yes.
We're never going to sell this. And the reason why, and I saw it with my own eyes, I remember going out on a little boat, we were riding around, we saw whales. We saw like whales like breaching and spewing the water.
Wow.
So that's on that side. I turn around and there's a bunch of little kids, these little boys on these little like rubber rafts, little tams on their heads, floating by. And then I look beyond them to the coastline, and there's like 1,000 young kids like yelling like this, and then like this grown men behind them in like a big rowboat going, "Go boys, go!" And I'm like, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, that's the religious summer camp." And I thought about how I've never seen that in America ever, not even once in my whole life.
Right. Not
in California, not in the Carolinas or Virginia. And the beauty of that, and just ask them, so what do y'all like do here? And like, we just live our lives.
Right.
We're not like trying to open up these 500 companies, like be the biggest rapper. We're just being with our families. And it's such a wholesome thing. And the last thing I kept asking them about was these diseases of drugs and guns. And they would just laugh at me. They would go, drugs and guns? They try and bring it in. You see it sometimes. But if you were to rob somebody for something with a gun, your great grandma would know about it in 20 minutes.
Right.
Or if you took drugs, the same thing. You would be so ashamed by having that person you love know about that whatever pleasure you got from that would disappear. Right. And you go from positive to negative, like that. And that communal feel was so important in them. And of course, here we've lost that. We was stolen there first. And we we fight to maintain it, but it's so hard to keep that going.
Well, they say, I mean, in so much public health research that the greatest wounds come when you are in very deeply unequal environments. The inequality is more damaging than not having much.
That's right.
Right. That it's like that you feel the inequality. So it's a very tiny example, but being someplace where I could be in the water all day and have I didn't have much stuff with me. I didn't look at my phone. I wasn't interested in shopping. I'm always looking there were all these distraction behaviors that just floated away because I was just centered.
Wow.
And I think that's what we live, like our consumer oriented society makes us, we move through distraction and distraction and stimulation and the blue light from the phone and the taking of the pills and the drinking to relax because we're stressed and that cycle. And I guess for me, one of the things I'm trying to think about now is in the long list of what we are tasked with in this moment, some of it has to do with self-care. And I don't mean in that like go to a spa day type way, but I mean in terms of what you're talking about. Because I think being in community is a form of self-care, right?
Well, you have children.
I do, yes.
What do you want from them in the future? Like you were saying, we probably won't see whatever is being broken apart in theory. Do you want them out there on the line? Do you want them like, this will live our lives? If they're creative and artistic, what do you want them to do with themselves?
I want them to borrow language from Baldwin, go the way their blood beats. I want them to love and be loved and have a sense of purpose and be able to take care of themselves, right? I want them to be able to, keep a roof over their heads and eat. But we all have different callings. I want them to feel free enough to meet their callings. And I think there's something, I think parents do this awful thing often of colonizing their children's futures.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Right. That's not for me to decide. I can share values though, and I can help facilitate the things that they decide they want to do. But my children know that even when they do things that I'm not really keen on, I love them to death, or love them to life. Yeah. So, I also think sometimes they know better.
That is true.
Right?
That is true. I don't have kids, but I have a lot of students. And I often just ask questions to the class like, hey, let's talk about this thing. Yeah. And to have that enlightenment from a generation that doesn't have the same, frankly, damage that maybe I have. That somebody's been around for a while. I've been wanting to ask you this for a while.
Oh, okay.
I know you read a lot.
Yes.
There's this long-standing question. I've seen essays about it throughout the decades. This idea of who are we as Black people speaking to?
Yeah.
And why are we speaking? So, for example, if I read the top 10 books by white authors, there's this variety of issues from simple ennui. Oh my goodness, life is so hard because, I didn't get to go to the college I wanted to go to.
Right.
So like sort of this denigration of like this really horrible stuff, like this trauma stuff. But then often for us, there's like an expectation of us speaking to the race issue, as they would have called it in the old days, or the Black issue, or speaking to our trauma, like trying to offer solutions. And I feel like very few of us are outside of that space. So how do you think about that issue, if it is an issue for you?
It's interesting. I as a writer, I always want to acknowledge the fact of white supremacy, but that isn't the driving force of my work. And more of it is wanting to actually remind us, hold up the mirror to what has been extraordinary in Black life. But I also think, it's so funny. I used to say this a lot about children's literature when my children were young. I was like, where are the like fun, quirky Black kid books that aren't about adversity or injustice? Right. All the, like, because, and I even think about this, so, this might get me in trouble, but I even think about this with respect to the way we talk or think about enslavement.
Mm-hmm.
Like people were born, lived, and died enslaved.
Absolutely.
And they still laughed, and they had friends, and they fell in love.
Absolutely.
And they had favorite meals. And so I think we have to actually be really serious about the fullness of what it means to be a human being.
I thought about that so much.
Yeah.
I remember Brother Robert Jones wrote The Prophets.
Yes.
And I read that book, and I remember before I read it, I always said I would never write a book set in that time period, because the expectation was to show how these ladies and men suffered so much, and the kids suffered so much. But he put so much joy in it.
Yes, he did.
And it's like opened a space for me as a writer to go, okay, well, how would I do this if I was going to write in this time period? And my wife and I, we had this rule. We couldn't watch a movie about slavery until after a year, like a little embargo on it.
Okay.
12 Years a Slave. We waited a whole year after they came out before we watched it. And of course, we know what happens in that film.
Right.
Lupita Nyong'o's characters, my goodness.
I have a problem with that film. Go ahead. You can go back to it. Yeah. Okay.
And so much of the art is doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we get in trouble. I talk about like film, like American fiction. It's just little issues I have here and there, like what was it actually for and like what is it doing? But my test is always like if I'm in front of a majority Black crowd, how they respond to it. Because I've done events here in this space, Baldwin, like my actual mother and her two friends that have been with her for 60 years in the very front row. And I can tell if they like, boy.
Really? Okay. Right.
I want to see like.
Okay. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I know when I was writing, my American Daughters book, I kept thinking about, okay, I'm not going to show this, and this, because you always see these terrible moments. But what about them laughing, cracking jokes together?
Yes.
And showing care for each other. That's a beautiful thing to have. And of course, you got to do that too.
Yeah. Well, but I want to stay on American Daughters for a minute, because I think that a piece of that for me as a reader is also you show such deep love for Black women in a way that isn't like the thing where like, oh, look, I'm a brother and I care about, but it's actually to see Black women fully. And that's remarkable. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be as remarkable, but it is remarkable. And it really, really matters a lot.
Thank you so much for that. I literally prayed on that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give a gift because they're why I'm here.
Yeah.
They're the reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
We will have a chance to talk a lot about this.
Yeah, we'll talk about the book. Yes.
But I do want to ask one very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned finding this particular cover image.
Yes.
And this is like a portal from the past to the future. How did you react when you saw this? Like when you first saw this picture, how did you react?
Oh, well, okay. So I've been a huge fan of Titus Kaphar for years. And so every piece of his that I see, I'm sort of like, oh my goodness, like he's doing the thing that I'm visually, that I'm trying to figure out how to do textually. And so when I saw that image, I was like, this is it. This is perfect. Because she has the little blue in her braids and this blue expanse behind her. Yeah. And then, so, and I wrote him a letter and asked him to let me use the cover. And I explained what he's doing, with sort of upsetting the pictures of the classical scenes in the 18th and 19th century where Black people are on the sides, and allowing that portal for contemporary Black people to go into the past and see the people who are held at the margins at the center. And that's it. For me. I mean, right, because part of what we do when we go into the past with our writing is to make it usable for us.
Live in the present. We have to live in the present.
Yeah.
What's your favorite film? If you have one.
I have a lot of them. But I would say, two of my favorites are Sugarcane Alley by Yazan Palsi, which is, you got to watch it online. It's so beautiful. It takes place in Martinique. It's an 80s film. And Daughters of the Dust, which I used to watch every week when I was in graduate school. Yes.
Why did you watch it?
It just felt, again, it was one of those things that it was getting to what I knew in my heart I wanted to do. long before I was even figuring out how to. I remember seeing her, seeing Julie Dash. She came and did a screening when I was in college, and I went in line to meet her. And I said, I want to do what you do. And she started telling me about, she said, well, filmmakers. I said, I don't mean with film. I said, I want to be a writer, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this thing. And I was completely incoherent, but yeah.
The bridging of the past to the present.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about yourself as a writer and you think about how far you've come, what do you think?
I have so much further to go.
Mm.
What about you?
I'm just going to say ditto.
All right. We got places to go.
Okay, very last question.
Okay.
When we first met at Tulane, the New Orleans Book Festival years ago, this was when South America had just come out. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of cool things happening, and it got cooler and cooler.
I'm so grateful. You know, I say this all the time. I cannot believe that I get to do this thing, to write books. And so the success in mainstream terms of South to America, and I'm very grateful for it, but that's not why I write. It's not why we write to tell the stories we're here to tell. But it means that I'm going to get to keep writing books, which is just, it makes me so happy. I'm so incredibly grateful.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. I love talking to you. It was really wonderful.
Well, Imani, there's fewer more pleasurable things in life than getting to talk to you in this setting. Thank you for being here today. And just keep doing what you're doing for us.
You too. All right.